second chapter of Yeshayah has some of the most famous, most well-known verses from the Bible, from the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. So in chapter 2, Hadavar asher chaza Yeshayahu ben Amoz al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. So these are the words that were prophesied, right? And we talked about this. So we didn't really talk about this. We have chazah. Chazon means a vision. Yirmiyahu has, the first couple of chapters, has had visions of what's going to happen. It's a different type of prophecy. I don't know what that means because I don't understand what prophecy is. None of us can understand. Then let's say Moshe, where Moshe was spoken to. And what is this vision that he sees? V'haya ba'acharit hayamim. In the end of days, Nachon yehar beit Adonai berosh harim, v'nisa migvaot, v'naharu elav kol hagoyim. God's mountain, right? Where the Beit HaMikdash stood, shall stand firm above the mountains. It will be the most elevated. I don't think this means physically, but I think respected, and tower above the hills, and all nations shall stream to it with joy. All nations shall stream to it. Everybody will be coming. Valchu amim rabim. And many people will come. V'amru, and they'll say, L'chu v'na'aleh el har Adonai el beit Elohei Yaakov. Let's go and ascend to the mountain of God, to the house of the God of Jacob. Right? This is a messianic vision because it is the final admittance by everybody that there is one God, and we should all be living the world in a peaceful way. And what are they going to do there in that mountain? V'yoreinu midrachav, v'nelcha ba'achrotav. He's going to instruct us in our ways. He's going to the paths that we shall walk, the roads that we shall walk. Why? Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai mirushalayim. Because from Zion comes forth Torah. But Torah here doesn't mean, what we're doing or learning Gemara. Torah means instruction, like a moreh is a teacher. That's where you want instruction. You want to live your life properly. That's where you should go to. And the word of God comes from Jerusalem. We know that verse, sing it many, many times on Simchas Torah and other times. And let's just, V'shafat bein hagoyim, and he will judge amongst the nations. V'ochiach la'amim rabim, and he'll arbitrate among different people. And what's important here with that is we live in a world where, I'm not saying that there are no judges who are not impartial, but there are no judges who can possibly understand the full truth and nothing but the truth. There are two sides to every story, and we don't know who's right, who's wrong. He said, she said. You can't know everything. You can't know it properly, and sometimes people have biases. God doesn't have biases. God knows the full story. And so it's going to be a rightful judgment between the different nations. He can arbitrate between them. And thus, as a result, v'chititu charbotam le'itim v'chanotehem lemazmerot lo yisagoy el goy charev v'lo yomdu od milchaman. Because God is the true judge, and everybody will judge properly. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. No nation shall take up the sword against another. They shall not know war anymore. And of course, these words are, I think it's in Doug Hammarskjöld Plaza, right across from the UN, with the hope that such a thing will happen. But the world has yet to find somebody who is an honest and knowledgeable judge, as opposed to human beings who can't be. So that's the first part of his prophecy, and obviously that's a messianic prophecy. Think about the last chapter, which was the destruction, and Yeshayah has both. He's going to talk about destruction and then bad things, and certainly at the end of his book, he's going to talk about messianic hopes. Continuing Pasuk, verse 5, Beit Yaakov l'chu v'nelcha b'or Adonai. House of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of God. Because you've turned away from God's ways, right? You are full of practices from Kedem, from the east, from others. You have like the sorcerers from the Philistine, and you have the customs of foreigners, right? You've moved away from the one God, the God of Israel. Their land is full of silver and gold. There's no limit to their treasures. Their land is full of horses. There's no limit. They have as many chariots as they want. But so Elilim, and their land is also full of idols. They bow down to the work of their own hands, right? The guy, he builds, he makes the idol, he carves it out, and then he bows down to it, right? And which is strange. You're bowing down to the thing that your fingers, it's what the second half of the verse means, that your fingers have themselves created. But man shall be humbled, and mortals shall be brought low. Do not forgive them. Go deep into the rock. Bury yourselves in the ground before the terror of God, right? You should hide yourself because you've turned against God and his potential dread. Man's haughtiness shall be brought low, and the pride, people's pride, is going to be humbled, because on that day only God will be exalted. And this is the main theme of this chapter. We talked about the first couple of verses, which are, of course, very well known. But the main theme of this chapter is God is the only true judge. God is the one who knows everything. God is the all-powerful. And human beings are secondary. We are not all-powerful. Sometimes we think we're all powerful, especially in a society back then where, the kings would make themselves out to be gods, to be deities. But human beings, no, that's not the case. The only one who can judge properly, the only one who will be exalted when everything is known, is the creator of this world. Continuing verse 12. Because, right, God has sort of set aside a day against everything, all the people who are too proud and arrogant, against all those who think of themselves so greatly. They are all going to be brought low. And against all the cedars of Lebanon, which are tall and beautiful, right? The Arzei Levonon. Shlomo used a lot of the cedars of Lebanon to build the Beit HaMikdash. We talked about it in the past. Lebanon was still right in the middle of that flag is a cedar. So it's the illustration of sturdiness, beauty, strength. That's what it is. And the second one that they mention, I don't know anything about these trees, V'alkol alonei habashan, and all the oaks of Bashan, V'alkol heharim haramim, V'alkol agvaot hanisaot, against all the high mountains and all of the lofty hills, V'alkol migdal gvoa, and against every skyscraper. I don't think that was the definition back then. V'alkol choma v'tzura, and every mighty wall. V'alkol oniot Tarshish, and against the ships of Tarshish. These were, I guess, sort of the navy, the best navy back then. Were these people? So they are, God is going to take care of all of these people. That's what here the second chapter of Isaiah is telling us, that God is going to control all of these people. Nobody else is going to, right? God is going to lessen them, I should say. The alcohol, and against all of the gallant barks, right? So here, V'sach v'ota adam v'shafel rum anashim v'niskav adonai levado b'yalmahu. Right? We say the same thing. Man's haughtiness will be humbled. Man's pride will be brought low, because on that day, God will remain alone. And as I said to you, this is the theme of this chapter of Yeshayah Perek Bet. The idea of the haughtiness of humans is going to descend, and God alone will be the master. And thus, in a sense, that's the beginning of the chapter is actually the conclusion of what happens. It's like he starts with the messianic vision. There's going to be no war. We'll beat our swords into plowshares. There won't be any war anymore. And why is that? Because on that day, it will be known to everybody that there's only one true arbiter. There's only one true judge. There's only one true ruler of the world, which is God. And as a result of that, all of the human beings, everything that humanity thinks is so great, will be lessened in comparison to God. The richest, he doesn't have the richest person on earth, the smartest person on earth, and all these other things like the great towers that people build and the cedars of Lebanon, etc., etc. Continuing in verse 18, the Ha'elilim Khalil Yachalov. And as for idols, they'll vanish completely. Uva'u bim mi'arot tsurim, uvim chilot afar, and man will enter caverns and hollows in the ground, because they're going to be terrified of God, and they're going to dread what God could do when he comes forth to sort of overpower the earth. On that day, man is going to throw away his gods of silver and his gods of gold, right? Which he built for worshiping. That's what man built them for. And it's referring to these last things are sort of some sort of foxes and bats. I guess that maybe there were some ancient societies there in the ancient Near East and the Middle East where people had gods of these different animals, I think, right? If we would go to Hinduism, all different animals, all different things. So continuing verse 21, Lavo b'nikrot hatzurim uvesifei haslaim mipnei pachad Adonai midar ga'ono bikumo la'arot ha'aretz. And again, he says the same thing. They're going to enter the rocks and the crevices of the cliffs because of the terror of God and dread his power and his majesty when he comes forth to overawe the earth. So don't be so haughty, people, humans, right? All you are is just a breath through your nostrils. And right, that, if you remember, of course, that's what happens in Genesis, that God in Bereshit, in the creation story, God blows into man nishmat chayim. God blows into man's nose a soul, and man is made, right, both from the earth, from the adamah, from the dirt, and has this soul that's blown into him from God. So there, it's meant as a compliment, saying you are godly. You had God breathe into you. But here it's used in the opposite fashion. It's saying all you are is neshama ba'apo. All you are is a breath. Don't think you're so great. And that's what he ends the chapter with. Ki vaman nechshavhu. For what's the reason that he thinks he's so important, that he merits, that people should respect him? Like the word chashuv, it's not so important, he's not so respected, he's not so great. Human beings are lesser. And this is, again, the theme of this chapter, and what we have going on here is this idea of God being alone. V'niskav Hashem levado. And therefore, because God alone is judging the earth, because God alone is listening to Russia and Ukraine and saying, this is the solution, this is what needs to be done, everybody's listening, and everybody's going to, and therefore there's no reason to wage war, because we will understand that we're being judged fairly, that everybody's in the same way, and therefore the people will come from everywhere to the temple, to the Beit HaMikdash, all of the nations, to bow down and show their respect to the creator of the world.